How often is it that you go into solo queue expecting to have a good time, then the map loads in and you find your team comp is just not good, and then you see the enemy's comp and you think, wow, theirs is just miles better than us, and then you spend the rest of the game just sort of worrying about how your comp isn't good against the enemy team. Well, today I actually want to talk about solo queue mentality and improving that mentality, and this is actually mostly based off something that I saw. The European player Obito made a little twit longer where he talked about the solo queue mentality improving and things like that, and I actually recommend you check it out. A good read, and I'll leave a link to it in the description below. But today I just basically am going to be echoing some of his points and going into a little bit more and discuss the overall solo queue environment. Now that starting example I gave is actually super common. You go into a solo queue game and your comp just isn't really good. And I've seen a lot of people from all sorts of ranks talk about how their comps are just not good and they sort of write a game off as a loss from the very get-go. This isn't exclusive to X rank, and I'm not here to tell you some super secret thing that will just make you all X rank from like the moment you stop watching this video. The reality is that the game is completely out of your control. Comps are completely out of your control. And so while some people may see that as a deterrent and they might dislike that idea, and there are people that are just going to write off a game as a loss from the moment you see your comp and the enemy comp, the reality is that there's actually much more to the solo experience than that. And I feel like that is the first thing that someone can improve with their solo queue mindset, is don't care about your comp. Focus on yourself. And while the game is a team game, the fact that the game doesn't provide any sort of communication in solo queue means that in reality you should just be focusing on yourself. There are certain things that your teammates are going to impact, like the objective with tower control, rainmaker, and clan blitz, but the reality is that because you have no control over them, you shouldn't be stressing over the things that you can't control. It's perfectly fine to be disappointed by a team comp that you get, but to blame the entirety of a game on them is not fair to those other players. No matter how they perform in a game, they are actual humans just like you. And instead, people should be focusing more about their individual play, themselves, not the other people that are in the game. And while this might sound like a no duh, obviously, it's actually surprising how often I come into streams of people playing solo queue and they see like an arrow spray or two E-leaders on their team and just go, well, we've lost this. And while there's some credit, there are some weapons that just are a little bit trickier to work with. The reality is that the game isn't decided at the load screen. Just because you have a bad comp doesn't mean you're just going to instantly lose. There are ways to work around a bad comp where you have something on your team that might not work very well. The best thing you can do with a comp like that is try to enable your teammates. People always try to act like just because they have something like a sploosh on their team that it's just going to do nothing and be completely irrelevant in the game. The actual reality of that is the sploosh might struggle if you don't help them. Because it is a team game, even if there's no communication, there should be still some effort to try and assist your team. Where you have someone that might be a sploosh player that's maybe struggling because they have no map control, well, try working with the sploosh. You have an E-leader that's constantly getting killed because they're being flanked, well, maybe watch their flanks a bit more. There are ways to enable these teammates that people just immediately write off as being worthless. Instead, people focus on just having to accept that they have to be the carry. They have to do everything. They have to get all the kills, get all the pain, play all the objective. Where the reality is that if you just actually work towards enabling your teammates and not so much of trying to be this all-god character in this match, then it becomes a little bit easier, and it actually starts to be a little less draining on you mentally. This is something that I personally have been working on, and it's a chore. Sure, there are games where it's super difficult, and some teammates are just not going to work well with you, and depending on what you pick. Like me playing an Octobrush, I can't really exactly enable a sploosh, for example. But if you stop to take a moment to just try to work with your teammates, then it actually changes quite a bit. And just it relieves some of the stress that people feel where they have to go into solo queue expecting to be this god in the lobby. Now, I stand by an old statement I said years ago about how an approach to solo queue should always be that you are the best player in the lobby, and I still think that's the case. And that's because the reality with the no communication, you should just go into it thinking that you are going to have to be really good. And that's not a fault, well, it is sort of a fault of the game, but it's different from just thinking you're a god. Going into it thinking that you are the best player in the lobby doesn't mean that you have to do everything and be the end-all be-all. It's different from that in that you should approach a game as something where you have a high impact and you need to focus on that impact that you have. Good players and the best players in games are people that have a high impact. And in this game, high impact doesn't just mean high kills. It can mean having turf control, playing the objective. It doesn't mean you have to contribute to all three, just whatever at that moment has high impact. And it doesn't always necessarily have to be kills. Despite it being a team game, the solo queue experience really is just about improving you as an individual. And you can't really focus on improving yourself as an individual if you focus too much on what your teammates are or aren't doing. If you blame an entire game on your players, then chances are you're just stagnating yourself. Spend more of your game focusing on what you did wrong, what you could have done better. As any game, no matter if you win or lose, is always a time for you to gain some experience, for you to improve and to learn. And you can't just teach the people in your game, you should be focusing on yourself, not your teammates. Try to focus more on what you're doing, not what they're doing. Try to pick out the things that you did right in every game. After the game's over and you've lost or you've won, think of, well, I did this really well, well, I did that one really badly. Try to just assess what actually happened at you, just you, not anyone else in your team. Did you lose? Well, what could you have done better? Oh, I probably should have gone towards the tower a bit more. Oh, I should have painted this side of the map a bit more. I should have used my special here differently. I probably shouldn't have armored right before I died. Things like that. Don't focus on what your teammates did right or wrong. Focus on what you did right and wrong. Because in the end, it's mostly just going to be you that improves from playing. And again, this is at any rank. Even in X rank, there are people that still make tons of mistakes. But the thing is, it's just to learn. Because there is no communication, there isn't really anything you can do to influence your teammates other than spamming this way or nice or booyah. It's literally nothing you can do. So to focus on your teammates more than yourself, I feel like is a big negative that the community has always been looking at. They always write games off because of the comp that they get dealt with. But the reality is that all of it is just to focus on you. You're the one here playing. You're the one that has control over how you are playing. You have to take this moment to improve. You have to find what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. And solo queue should not be a way to try and show how much you can carry a game, but to show how you as an individual can play the game. If you focus more on self-assessment after games, you'll actually start to realize that you start to make less and less mistakes as you become more and more aware of the mistakes that you're making. And you improve on certain things like using specials correctly or not using them in incorrect times. Basically, just take any moment you can. In fact, I have this tendency where if I'm playing solo or if I'm playing with friends, I will often, if I die, I just speak to myself. It's sort of like a weird thing. Yeah, I get it's not normal, but I'll always say stuff like, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that, or I probably shouldn't have approached that guy, or I probably shouldn't have turned that corner, oh, I probably should have thrown a bomb there first. Sort of things like that to help your mind figure out what it is. Walk yourself through what you had done, what got you to this part. What did you do that ended up getting that result? And if people focus more on themselves and not their teams, then you would see a larger improvement on yourself. Because there's a mental game with just blaming something on someone else. You would just immediately trick your brain to thinking you did nothing wrong because I blamed X. I blamed Y. This guy is a problem, not me. It tricks your brain into thinking that there was nothing wrong on your end, and that's dangerous. For a while, there's always been people saying, oh, the only way you can really improve this way is to have a capture card, so you can record and watch back your gameplay to figure out what you did wrong. But that's actually not true. If people are the type that they can self-assess in the moment, at the exact time that happened, then those people are just as capable of doing it as someone that has a capture card. In fact, the people that have good memory and then can also self-assess like that are probably quicker to learn than those that can just record and watch it back later. And I've also found in the past that very few people actually watch back their own gameplay to figure out what they did wrong. In fact, that's just a common trend. Most people in this community don't do that. But those that can self-assess and figure out, walk themselves through what they did, those are the people that are more likely to improve. So pretty much what I've been getting at this whole time is that the real way, the real key to improving in solo queue is not to just blame other people. It's to focus more on what you as an individual can do. Don't write off a game because your comp looks bad and theirs looks good. Just focus on you versus that comp. What can you do against them? Who on that team needs to be focused down? How can you enable your teammates? You see someone struggling to get map control? Help them. You see someone struggling with getting flanked? Watch them. Do what you can as an individual to assist the team and assist the game. But at the end of the day, it is you that goes into this game to improve. You can't go into a game and improve your teammates. So why focus on your teammates? Don't give a crap about what they're doing. Don't blame them. Blame yourself. Focus on what you could do, not what they didn't do. And I feel like that is something that, for some reason, the community has never really focused on. It's always been a blame game. At least from what I've seen, a lot of people just play blame game. There's always going to be people that are just not going to be good in solo. There's probably going to be people that are going to have bad games, and that's fine. That's part of being human. But to just solely blame people like that is only going to hinder people in the long run. So basically, focus on yourself. Focus on your individual play. Focus on the impact you can have. You don't have to be some all-seeing god and carry the entire game with kills, paint, objective time, but just do what you as an individual can do to improve the quality of the game and not write it off immediately. So with that being said, that's all I have. So I want to thank everyone for watching, and I will see you all next time.